My name is David Lee Summers, and I am reading from my novella, Breaking the Code. And with this segment, I'm going to transport you back to Friday, February 20, 1942. As Jerry Begay drove home from the recruitment rally at the high school, snow began to fall. At first, just a few light flurries drifted through the air. Then the flakes fell heavier as he cleared the city limits and drove the 10 miles south to his family's land. Smoke wafting from the stovepipe, poking from his family hogan's roof, gratified him. It would be warm inside. His mother no doubt left some stew on the fire for him. He guessed 2 inches of snow already blanketed the ground by the time he walked from the pickup to his front door. The Hogan was a small, cozy home. A cast-iron wood stove sat in the building's center, and the scents of lamb and vegetables simmering told him he had been correct about her having dinner ready for him. "Ya'e," his father said, speaking the traditional Diné greeting, which asked whether Jerry was well. Jerry responded by saying he was well, "Ya'anisht," and sat down at the table. His mother brought him a bowl of stew, and he began to wolf it down. "So how was the meeting?" asked Jerry's mother, Maria. "Good," Jerry said. "Lots of people showed up." He took another bite, then swallowed. "I signed up," he said the last quietly. Jerry's father, Javier, frowned. "We need you here on the farm this season more than ever." "You need to finish your high school diploma," his mother chastened. "I'll earn money faster in the military and I'll get skills that can help me after I'm back." Everything the recruiters had said about joining up sounded better than continuing to feed sheep and take boring old classes. Besides, if people don't go, evil men like Adolf Hitler will send their soldiers to take our lands away from us. "It has happened before, and we have survived." His father sounded tired. "You sound like that history teacher at school, Miss Todachine." Jerry scooped up the last of his stew. His mother's jaw tightened. "Don't speak her name in this house." "What?" Jerry shrugged. "She's just a loudmouth do-gooder. She found a job for John Claw, of all people. I thought the sheriff would throw him in jail for sure." Maria Begay nodded. "She consorts with all kinds of troublemakers and keeps them from finding justice. She spends way too much time with those high school boys." Jerry snorted a laugh. "She's not much older than we are. She's got to spend time with someone." He took his bowl to a wash tub near the wood stove and put it in to soak until the morning when it could be washed. "Mark my words, she's trouble," Maria reiterated. She walked over to the wood stove and tossed in more wood from a nearby stack. "When would you leave us?" Javier's eyes narrowed. "A bus will come through Gallup week after next. It'll take us to Fort Wingate where we'll be sworn in, then they'll take us to San Diego for training." Javier grunted. "California is very far. How long will you be away?" 3 years, Jerry said. Maria put her hand to her chest. "So long?" Jerry held out his hands. "I'll talk to the guys at school. I can find someone to help you here on the farm." He walked over and gathered his mother up into his arms. For the first time he could remember, she looked sad and frail. "Our need for help is not our main concern," Jerry's father said. "We'll miss you." Jerry gave his mother a squeeze and then sat down opposite his father. If this were the old days, warriors would be sent out to meet a threat. This is no different. Javier pursed his lips and nodded. "I suppose you're right." "But 3 years!" His mom shook her head. "I'll write," Jerry promised. "And if you guys ever let them install a telephone out here, I could probably call now and then." "We'll consider it," Maria said. "But only for this reason." Javier reached out and took his son's hand. "We'll miss you, but I understand why you believe this is necessary." He stood and walked over to the bed. "Now, the snow is arguing with my bones. I think it's time to get some sleep." The Hogan didn't allow much room for privacy. Many families had moved into homes in town only to lose those homes during the Great Depression and return to traditional dwellings out on their land. Jerry's family was one of those. His parents had a bed along one of the Hogan's walls. Jerry's bed was along the wall across from it. They'd set up an old-fashioned privacy screen between the two. Jerry's dad blew out the oil lamp next to him. Cloth rustled as Jerry's parents changed into their nightclothes. Jerry followed suit and climbed under a stack of warm blankets. Despite the snowstorm outside, he was snug in his family's home. The idea of sharing a barracks with other soldiers didn't bother him. His parents began to snore, and the wind whipped outside. His eyes grew heavy, and he began to drift off to sleep. Tap, tap, tap. The tapping caused his eyes to spring open. No trees grew up against the Hogan to cause this noise. He listened. Maybe he had just dreamed the sound as he had started to drift off to sleep. His parents still snored. Whatever he had heard, it hadn't awakened them. His eyelids grew heavy again. Tap, tap, tap. Again, Jerry's eyes sprang open. The tapping had resumed. It sounded like it came from the wall beside him. He tried to picture the outside of the Hogan. He didn't think there was anything there but grass. The wall had been constructed from solid logs. Nothing light could make a tapping loud enough to wake him. He tried to dismiss it as his imagination. Wide awake now, he thought more about the Marine Corps. He wondered what boot camp would be like. He had no doubt he could cut it. He had been up early in the morning and working hard ever since his family moved back out to their traditional lands. His chest swelled with pride as he thought about continuing the long tradition of Navajo warriors. Tap, tap, tap. The sound returned. No doubt about it, this was no dream. He thought more about what could cause the tapping. He wondered if some wood had broken loose in the high winds or if the roof had been damaged. It could probably wait until morning, but he thought he had better go check it out. He wouldn't get to sleep until he knew what it was. He shoved back the blankets, pulled on his trousers and heavy boots, and lit the lamp. As he walked toward the door, he looked back at his parents, still asleep. He went outside. The snow was coming down heavier than before and swirled in white eddies. He stayed close to the house so as not to get lost in the storm, crunching through snow deeper than the tops of his boots. He reached the back wall of the octagonal structure and inspected the building. There were divots in the snow, as though an animal had been there and left. Had a sheep gotten loose and butted the wall? He held up the lantern and looked around. In the distance stood a tall figure on two legs. Its long ears lay back, and it snarled, revealing long, sharp teeth. A forbidden word came to mind. A word as shocking as the vilest pornography. Although this did not involve ripping off clothes, it involved ripping off the very skin to reveal the monster underneath. Ye nalushi in the Dene language. Skinwalker in English. It didn't mean the same thing, but it sounded almost worse. The creature turned and walked away. He knew he should follow his path back to the front door, blow out his lantern, and forget what he had seen. Good sense almost prevailed, but curiosity got the better of him. He took a step away from the house, and then another. The skinwalker continued to prowl through the snow. Jerry followed a few more steps. The wind picked up. The snow came down faster until he lost sight of the creature. He ran forward a few more steps, heart pounding furiously. The skinwalker had vanished. The cold began to seep through his clothes. He needed to get back inside before the storm grew worse. All he had to do was keep a clear head, turn around, and follow his path. When he turned, he could no longer see his footprints. He could no longer see the Hogan. He should only be a few steps away. He began trudging the direction he thought home should be. Despite the cold, exhaustion came over him. It would be so good to lie down and go to sleep.